So welcome to our first episode of what we are tentatively calling Local Visionaries. By the time you're watching this, it may be something different. Today we've got John Waller, and John Waller may know him from Uncage the Soul Productions and from such productions as Finding Portland, Finding Oregon. Pretty awesome stuff. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely look that up right now. But yeah, welcome, John.
Thank you.
First thing to start off is you were at TEDx. When was that? About a year ago?
Yeah,
now?
just about a year ago,
Okay.
last April.
One thing that I really liked was your story about, as a boy, flying your model rocket with a camera in it.
The AstroCam 110.
Right. And taking that picture of your house from the air. And I noticed there's some parallels to the work you're doing now with aerial footage. But did you have any idea at that time that you would be going into photography and video, or were you just thinking that you wanted to be an astronaut like everyone else did at that age?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to be an astronaut, so I was interested in, of course, seeing what was up there, but not from a photography perspective, from perhaps my own perspective. The AstroCam 110 for a 10-year-old boy was my vessel to get up there. And that picture that I got just was pure luck, really. But it wasn't until probably 25 years later that I actually evolved into a professional career in video production. And I dabbled in photography quite a bit, and as well as video, and at a certain point I realized that I needed to diverge in one track or the other, and I ended up going down the video production track.
Gotcha. So what other inspirations did you have that led you down that track? Was it other photographers or filmmakers, or was it like movies or different things or different projects that you'd seen? I
can trace it back to really three experiences that I had as a young child or a young adult. And the first one was spending a lot of time with one of my childhood friends, Jason Donovan. And we would recreate these Hollywood movies, taking one of his really small cameras out, and we'd shoot these scenes that we would later splice with the real movie, and we would do it all on VCR. And he had a couple of VCR tape decks, and so we'd splice our footage in with the Hollywood version of Predator, and we'd create our own independent movie. And so we spent a lot of time in junior high and high school playing around with cameras, doing stuff like that. So that's the first thing. The second is that when I was in college, I was an environmental science major, and my senior thesis was on a timber sale. And so I was writing this long paper and doing a lot of interviews, and I had an epiphany that I should do a video, a short documentary about this particular timber sale to present as at my senior thesis presentation. So that was the second thing, and at the time I had no interest in video production whatsoever, and it was a nightmare to do that because, again, I was doing it with VHS tapes, linear editing, a couple of VCR, VHS tapes together, and it was a brutally painful experience. Probably thought to myself, wow, I'm really glad I don't do this for a living. And then the third thing is that as a young adult, I started taking video cameras out on adventures, and I have always really enjoyed sharing my own personal experiences with friends and family, whether it be through writing or through photography or through video. And I found that video allowed me to be perhaps the most creative in the way that I told a story. And so I would put these little productions together for my family and friends that each time I did became a little more elaborate. And I think that's where that light bulb moment happened, that, wow, maybe I could do this for a living. And then a lot of years later that actually happened. But
right, sure.
That's my journey.
So did you start working then at that time to realize that passion as a career, or did you kind of just play around until stuff fell into place? I mean, how?
Well, I was a high school science teacher, so that was my career. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, I worked at David Douglas High School as a 9th grade general science teacher. Okay. And I am now retired, so I'm really enjoying retirement now. It's great. The PERS is awesome. I don't know. I will never see PERS, by the way. But I think I had a moment where I was talking with a resort out in Central Oregon called the Dalles Ranch. And I'd spent a little time out there, and I was talking to the owners who had newly started this place. And they were talking about their struggles in marketing this spot and how to express to clients how great it was to be there. And I said, well, have you ever thought of a video? And they said, no, we wouldn't even know where to begin. And I said, I bet I could do a video for you. And so we made this arrangement where I brought out 25 of my friends, and they got to spend the entire weekend out there for free, and they were my models. And I would produce this promotional video for them that they could put up on their website. And that was my first commercial job that I, of course, didn't get paid for. It was this trade and having all of my friends come out and spend the weekend out there. But that was, again, sort of a light bulb moment for me that, wow, maybe I could turn this into some kind of career. But the road is long to do that because you have to get the experience, have to learn how to run a business, you have to get all of the equipment, you have to build a client base, a portfolio of work so that you have credibility, and all of these things take a really long time.
So speaking about the work you do now, there seems to be a pretty fine niche that you've carved out, at least for a lot of the fun stuff, the Finding Portland, the Finding Oregon, Treeverse, these other outdoor projects. And it seems like a part of that niche is working in these sort of adverse conditions that most people are not going to experience, at least not very often in their lives. And how did that come about? How did you sort of start specializing in that area?
Well, I've always been a very adventurous person. And so there were a number of years that I spent guiding mountaineering trips, whitewater rafting trips. And so that was a lifestyle that was already inherent in me. So it wasn't so much of a stretch to take camera gear into these places. I've always been really interested in what I haven't seen or how I haven't seen something. So I'm always thinking, I guess, outside of the box in that way. And so, for example, with caves, I hadn't seen a lot of great cave videography because it's really hard to do. It's really inaccessible and it's really brutal on camera equipment. And that's probably why you don't see so much of it. But I was going to these places anyway, and it wasn't so much of a stretch to take this camera gear in and try to figure out how to use it. I think my caving buddies who packed all of the camera gear and batteries along with me would argue that, well, it was maybe a little harder than you say it was. But that was something that I was really driven to do, was to explore these places, not only for myself, but to figure out how to share them within high quality video in a way that people could really enjoy and relate to.
And that was, that particular project, was that with the 5D Mark II? That was sort of
sort
of dawn of the new era, right?
It was, and that's actually the camera that allowed me to bring that production to fruition. Because I had spent a lot of years shooting really bad cave videography. It was grainy, it was dark, it was shaky, it was noisy. There was nothing about it that was all that good. But the first time that I got my hands on a 5D Mark II, I actually borrowed it from Pro Photo Supply. They loaned it to me, and I took it up to the ice caves up by Mount Adams. And the first time I turned that thing on and looked in a cave environment and almost pitch black with only headlamps, I was blown away. And that completely revolutionized the way that I would film from then on, and especially in low light situations.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm going to skip around here because that kind of brings up a next point, which is this idea that there is sort of this democratization of video production right now, and you're seeing a lot of people who previously could not afford the gear or couldn't take the time to learn the gear, which is becoming a lot more accessible now to people with HD SLRs, et cetera. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that type of sort of market saturation there?
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it bad for business?
Sure. I love it, actually, because there's a lot of people producing a lot of content.
Right.
And two things happen as a consequence of that. One is that as a professional, you're constantly pushed to raise your own expectations about what you want to do. So there's a lot of people that are producing really beautiful and brilliant and creative and masterful content. And even more so now with this access to all of these great tools. So as a professional, that pushes me, and I appreciate that. The second thing is that for someone like myself that doesn't have access to a huge production suite of equipment, it also allows me that same kind of access. Now the thing that I and the guys that I work with that we're always trying to do is we're always trying to separate ourselves a little bit from what other people are doing. So, and I think that's a really important distinction for anybody looking to become a professional videographer, is that you really do want to create a niche for yourself. You want to specialize, and you want to get really, really good at that one thing. Mm-hmm. And you want to try, again, thinking about what haven't I seen and how haven't I seen it. We're not in the business of trying to redo what somebody else has already done. We're in the business of trying to create new images, new perspectives, new ways of looking at something, new ways of storytelling. So, you know, I'm just as appreciative as everyone else for the fact that a lot of this camera gear that's really high quality is also now affordable.
Right.
The other thing about that is that there's that old adage that it's the best camera is the one that you have with you. Mm-hmm. And I really think that that's true, because as we've seen, you can shoot something on an iPhone. Mm-hmm. And if it's compelling content, if there's a good story there, if it's something unique or really funny, people are going to watch it and they're going to love it, and they're going to forgive the video quality.
Yep. And
I think that is always going to maintain itself. So the foundation of our work is story-driven content from a perspective of unique angles, unique ways of storytelling, unique perspectives.
Is there ever a time still when you're getting ready to go out on a new shoot for a client where you feel like, man, am I ready? Do I know what I'm doing? I mean, do you still ever have that sort of fear of failure that I know affects a lot of people, at least when they're beginning out? Or do you have all the confidence now that you just strive right out there?
Yeah, well, again, we always say that we fake it till we make it. Uh-huh. And I know that as a high school science teacher, there were often times that I would have an entire classroom full of ninth graders coming into my class, and I had only learned what I was teaching them 15 minutes before. And I would stand up there as if I was an expert explaining this concept to them, and they didn't know the difference. And at the end of the class, they'd all walk out, and I'd be, wow, okay. And I would say that is quite normal in the work that we do, because things are changing so quickly. Techniques and tools and resources available are changing dramatically fast. And there's no way that you can be an expert on it. I am really, we laugh in the office that we're our own interns, because we're all learning from each other in the office at any one time. I may be an expert on one thing, and people are, I'm not even an expert on anything. I may know something a little bit more than someone else, and they're asking me for advice or suggestions, but in the next minute, I'm doing the same to the other guys that I work with, and we're all collaborating together to figure this stuff out.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm no expert. I just work hard. I work hard at learning how to learn. Uh-huh. And I think that's what's important, is on a day-to-day basis, I'm learning how to learn. And I'm learning how to figure all of this stuff out.
Well, it seems like every project that you do is kind of one-upping what you did previously, and so I can see how that would be incredibly important, because it seems like every time you go out, you come back with something that, hey, you didn't do that before, so it is brand new.
We're really working hard at staying relevant. And in order to stay relevant, I believe that you have to continue to raise your own bar and raise your own expectations about what you can deliver. And when you continually put out material that that is reminiscent of something that you've done before time and time again, I think that gets a little stale. And I really love creating new, fresh, creative content.
People who may be looking to make that transition from amateur to professional, what sort of advice would you have for people in that situation?
Well, yes, I have some advice. I would have some advice. I would say, first of all, there's a great book out there called The Entrepreneur's Myth. And that is that this idea that you love to do something and it's your hobby and you're really passionate about it and you decide to make it your profession. And so you start a business doing that thing. And after some time, if you're not careful, then you become consumed by that activity and in a sense entombed by it. And you don't really like it so much anymore, and you don't become as passionate about it, and you feel really bound by this thing that you used to love, but now you feel stuck. And so I think, for example, with us, with video production, yeah, my career stems from a real love, an internal love of shooting video. So the thing that you have to be aware of in starting a business is that most of my time is actually spent doing something totally unrelated to shooting video. It really is. It's running a business, it's marketing, it's dealing with clients, it's tending to equipment and gear, it's learning how to learn, it's keeping up with the latest content that is being shot, the latest equipment that's coming out, and it actually has nothing to do with finally going out into the field and shooting video. So that's the first thing that somebody has to be aware of, is that as a hobbyist, you're probably going to have way more opportunity to go out and shoot video than if you become a professional and start your own business. The other thing that I would recommend is, and that's something that has been critical to me, especially over the past few years, is surrounding yourself with a really good team of people. There were a lot of years where I worked as a sole proprietor, independent, and honestly, those were lonely years. And I was okay, I did good work, but in surrounding myself with a team of people who are really exceptional in their own way, the collective result of our work is so much better than anything that I could have individually created.
Do you have a favorite production you've worked on, or a favorite memory from any of the productions?
I have so many wonderful memories from productions. One that really stands out, and it is a perfect example of being in the right place at the right time with the right equipment, was from the Into Darkness caving project. And we were in a cave in Arizona, a beautiful cave. We went down into it and we explored some of the passages. And on our way out, I looked up towards the entrance, and it was a long tube extending up towards a pretty small hole in a hillside. And we were inside the cave, and I was looking up towards the entrance, and I saw this tiny sliver of light that was peeking through and landing on the far wall. And I realized that the sun was descending into a position in which it was exactly aligned with the entrance of this cave. And we were in the bottom of it with all this camera gear. And what happened in the next 10 minutes was mind-blowing, because the sun descended right into that hole, and it illuminated the entire cave with this dusty, misty light ray magic. And the water was dropping, and it was backlit, splashing. And for that 10 minutes, I was like a giddy 10-year-old because I had a slider, and I had a DSLR, and I had a tripod, and it was tremendously exhilarating. And I had no idea that that was going to happen. And that honestly probably only happens 1 or 2 days out of each year that the sun is in that perfect position. I just happened to be there at the right time.
I was going to say, was that the solstice or something?
I don't know. It was just some random day. It was in the spring. I don't think the Mayans created that particular cave. That was all Mother Nature. But that is a perfect example of the moments that are most special to me, are those ones that are really unexpected like that, where it's just beyond your wildest imagination beautiful, and you have these, you're just you're in the right place at the right time, and you've got the gear that you need. Now, I've also been in the right place at the right time without the equipment that I need, and that is devastating. I mean, I've been brought to tears in those moments, in fact. There was when we were working on our Finding Portland project, we spent almost every day for an entire month of last March out shooting. And we are always trying to anticipate when those moments might happen. So that just means always being out, always having your gear, and always being set up and shooting, especially with time lapse. You don't know when that beautiful sun splashed moment is going to happen. So you just have to be rolling your time lapse and hope that it does. One morning we slept in. We'd been working hard for 3 weeks, and we decided to sleep in. And as I was driving into the office that morning, I came over the rise on Hawthorne, and I looked and I saw this tremendously beautiful full rainbow arcing over downtown Portland. And I just drove up to the waterfront, and I started crying, because I knew that that was a moment that we weren't going to be able to capture in our Finding Portland video. And there was no more perfect of a Portland moment than that. And there was a guy clicking away with a camera right next to me. He had a big wide-angle lens. He's like, "Isn't this awesome?" And I took a picture with my iPhone, and I had tears in my eyes. So
At least you had the iPhone.
I do have the iPhone picture, yeah, and I have that memory.
Oh, man. Well, looking to the future, what's coming up next? What do you think are going to be your next big challenges, the next adaptations you'll have to make? How do you foresee growing and changing?
Well, we as a team at Uncage the Soul are, as I said, always trying to come up with new and creative ideas about how to shoot, what to shoot, where to shoot. And we're always really trying to stay relevant and anticipating in advance what are going to be the new trends, the new techniques, the new tools that people are using. So that's always a challenge. It's always a challenge trying to keep up with an industry that seems to recycle itself every 6 months. The other challenge that we are constantly facing is media management. The more cameras that you have and the higher the quality of the footage, the more space it takes up on hard drives. And for us, it's critical that that is not only on one hard drive, because we have a lot of content for clients that can't be lost. And so it needs to exist on 2 hard drives in 2 different places. So that's double the storage. So when you start talking about projects that are 1 to 5 terabytes per project, and you need to doubly store that, and then you expand that by 20 to 30 projects a year, that's a real challenge for us. The Finding Portland project alone was 6 terabytes of photography.
Of stills?
Of stills, 308,000 stills. Now, that's maybe a bit more ambitious of a project than most of our commercial projects, but still, that's a reflection of the challenge that we face, is what do we do with this stuff? You don't want to delete it because it's priceless. So where do you put it?
Right. Well, I think that just about covers everything. Anything else you wanted to add?
Well, 2 things that I want to share a little bit. One is I want to expand on the team at Uncage the Soul Productions, because really Uncage the Soul Productions is a team of people, and we've got an incredibly dynamic group of people that work there. We've got a guy that's on a talk show airing currently on Discovery International. We've got a professional skydiver. We have an award-winning National Geographic photographer that are all part of our team. These are very dynamic and energetic people, and they are critical to the brand of Uncage the Soul Productions. It would not be what it is without them. So I'm merely a face of a team that we really work well together, and that has been the work that we produce, particularly over the past 2 years, has been a consequence of a number of people working really hard together as a cohesive group. So that's the one thing that I really want to express about Uncage the Soul, and again, extending that to people who are considering becoming professionals themselves, is there is no substitute for surrounding yourself with really brilliant and talented people. One of the challenges that we have as a company is educating our clients about the true value of our work. you have no idea how much time, how much equipment, and how much emotional energy it takes to produce a good video project until you've done it yourself. And most clients haven't, and they have no idea. And so it's always a challenge for us to educate a client as to why it may take as long as it does, or it may cost as much as it does to do our work. Because there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that a client is never aware of. And so part of our work is educating clients about where do these costs come from. You know, the more educated our client base is in Portland, I think the better that is for the industry.
Sure, definitely.
So yeah, I think those are really the two additions that I had.
Okay, well, I think we're good.
Cool. Maybe a plug for UncageTheSoul.com?
Yeah, I was going to say, so obviously UncageTheSoul.com. Where else can people find your work? Because I know it's online everywhere. But
yeah, we try to refresh the content that we have on UncageTheSoul.com pretty regularly. So that is our archive, our portfolio of work. You can keep up to date on our immediate adventures and projects through Facebook, and I'm sure that you'll set up those 2 links.
Yep.
So
put
just
one right
like
there.
that, the magic of
Yes.
video. Anything can happen. Anything's possible.
That's true. Well, hopefully. All right. Well, thank you very much, John.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, having you on the show.
Yeah, I like it. It's the new Pro Photo Supply talk show.
Yeah.